In this first episode of a special two-part series, I'll be sharing my habits for manifesting success. So let's get started.
Hi, I'm Katie, and after many years as a struggling single mum, I transformed into a highly successful manifester with multiple businesses, better relationships, financial abundance, and way more peace, joy, and happiness in my life. Each week, I share the real secrets around how to manifest successfully, as well as the amazing and sometimes crazy lessons I've learned along the way, so that you can apply it all to your own manifesting, transforming your life from the inside out. This is That Manifesting Podcast.
Welcome back to That Manifesting Podcast. I'm your host, Katie, Manifestation Queen Extraordinaire. That's just a title I've just decided on the spot that I quite like, so I'm going to claim it. It's been a hot minute since I have recorded a podcast. I did have a little break over the summer, which then turned into a longer break. In all honesty, I was busy. I went on holiday, beautiful holiday with my sister, but also I just needed some time to reflect on what I wanted to do with this podcast, what I wanted to do with my wider manifestation services that I provide. So I just needed some time away to reflect on what I wanted to do going forward. It's not long till the end of the year, and I do find that at this time of the year I tend to go into quite a reflective mode and start thinking ahead. What do I want to achieve? What hasn't gone so well for me this year? What do I want to change for next year? So that's why it's been a little bit quiet on the podcast front. But I do also want to say thank you to everybody who reached out and asked about when new episodes were coming. It was really, really lovely. And as someone who spends a lot of her time by herself, just to have a few people reaching out and saying, is everything okay? Haven't heard a podcast for a little while? That really meant a lot. So thank you very much. I'm all fine. I'm absolutely fine. I've just been being a bit of a hermit. So yeah, this is the first of, I guess, slight difference to how I'm going to be doing the podcasts from now on. I will still be doing, of course, all the manifestation tips and sharing my knowledge with you, because I know that's why people mostly tune in, is because you want help with your manifesting and to get the results that you want. So don't worry, that's not going anywhere. I do want you to get to know me on a deeper level. So manifestation is a huge part of my life because it's what I help people with. It's what drives me. But as you know, humans are multifaceted. There's a lot more to everybody than just the things that they do to help other people or the things that they believe in. So I'm just going to add a couple of more segments into each episode. Let me know what you think of them. If you hate them, I'll go back to just talking about manifesting and nothing else. You can text into the show. In the show notes below this episode, there is a text number. So you can just text that and either say, Katie, stop talking about things that we don't care about, just talk about manifesting, or yes, we love it, or maybe you've got different ideas for things that you'd like me to cover. That's my welcome back. That was just a bit of a blah at you down the microphone. I'm sorry about that, but it's been a while. I've got a lot to say. But that said, let's get into the episode. Okay, so the topic of today's manifestation chat, I'm actually splitting it into two parts. First part this week, second part next week. And it's all about my 10 habits for manifesting success. And these are all 10 of these habits are things that I've had to implement into my own life to get the results that I wanted. So I'm going to do 5 today and I'm going to do 5 next week. That's what the topic of today's manifestation conversation is. But before we get to that, I'm going to do the first new segment, which I'm very excited about. And it is question of the week. I hear this on a lot of podcasts. I've shamelessly stolen it from a lot of other podcasts I listen to, because as a listener, I really like question of the week. And this, for me, on my podcast, this could be a question about manifesting. It could be a question about anything to do with life in general. It's just a way, I guess, for you to get to know me a little bit better on a different level. So I did put out a thing on my Instagram stories just saying, what question would you ask me? I'm going to cover it in this new segment. And the top questions were all about love and dating. But there was one that I really liked. So that's the one I'm going to do as my question of the week this week. If you do have a question that you want to ask me, manifesting or non-manifesting related, then again, text in the show. The link to text is below this episode in the show notes, or you can DM me on any of my social media platforms. My handle is The Manifesting Mindset, and you can usually get hold of me easiest on Instagram or Facebook. Okay, back to the question of the week. The question of the week that I got is, do you approach someone or do you expect them to approach you? I love this question, because I know it's a big topic of conversation. So some of my friends will happily approach a guy that they want to get to know, to ask out on a date. They will make the first move. Me, I am not that person. I am confident. I happily chat to guys, and I think by nature I'm a very flirtatious person. I do find it easy to talk to people, but when it comes to taking that step about talking about a date, hell no will I ask somebody out on a date. That makes my skin crawl, and I'm not too sure why. I don't know if it's because I fear the rejection. Can you imagine walking up to somebody in a bar, trying to talk to them, asking them if they'd like to maybe go for a drink sometime, and they just say no? Some people wouldn't be bothered by that. I would be horrified. I would probably be sick in my own hand, and then possibly wet myself and probably just crawl away dying of embarrassment. So yeah, no, that's not for me. I just couldn't do it. I like people to ask me. I'm a princess. I want someone to come up to me and say, hey, how are you? Do you fancy going on a date? But don't you find, if you're single, people don't seem to do this anymore. There's none of this coming up to people and chatting, and I can't remember the last time somebody just approached me and asked me to go on a date. I think it's hard for guys now to come up to a woman and ask them out. I don't know. I'd like to hear a guy's perspective on this. I would love to know, do guys feel uncomfortable asking women out, or is it just that I'm just not their type and I don't know? But no, I will not go and ask somebody out. So yeah, that's my answer to that. So no, I absolutely will not approach somebody. I do fully expect them to approach me, and that may be completely the wrong way to approach it, but that's how I feel about it. Let me know what you think. Text into the show and let me know. Do you approach people and ask them out, or do you expect them to ask you out? Let me know what you think. Right, let's get into the manifestation chat. As I said, I'm going to be talking about the first 5 habits for manifesting success. The next 5 will be next week. Let's get straight into it. The first habit that I had to learn to help my manifestations happen was to always look for the lesson. I know that might sound like cheesy shit, but it's so true, because when you're in a difficult time, it's easy to fall into that victim mode and feeling like life is happening to you instead of for you. And I have found over the years, as somebody who has had a lot of ups and downs, I have had the highest highs, I've had the lowest lows, but I feel like one of the habits that has really helped me maneuver my way, particularly through the difficult times, has been always looking for the lesson, because I do firmly believe that no matter what happens in your life, whether it's positive or negative, there's always something valuable that you can learn from it. Because when you have that mindset, it almost helps take the emotion out of it a little bit, because you start analysing it and thinking, okay, this is either going to give me what I want or it's going to give me the lesson that I need. And it starts to move you from frustration and sadness to being curious about what that lesson is. And I have had a lot of times in my own life where I didn't know what the lesson was when I was right in it. But over time, you start to figure it out, and something will happen, and then it makes sense. And I remember when I started my business, my marketing business, and I'd gone straight from being in the corporate world. I didn't have to worry about pricing. I literally just did my job, got paid my paycheck at the end of each month. When I started the business, I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just going into it blind, and I'd only just started up, and this new potential client got in touch with me. It was a contact of somebody that I knew in the corporate world, and they wanted me to give them a proposal for doing all of their social media for them. And I was so excited. I thought, this is it. This is going to be the start of my multi-million pound marketing business. So I did this amazing presentation. I really researched what I could do. I drew on all of my experience in the corporate world, what I could do to really help this brand with their social media. I turned up, I was rocking my suit. I felt like something off of The Apprentice, like powerful, but obviously not a dickhead. But in the terms of, powerful businesswoman, turned up. I pitched this presentation. It was, even if I say so myself, it was bloody amazing. And at the end, they said, "Oh, that's really great. Thank you for all of that. Can you just tell us how much it would cost?" And I suddenly realised that I hadn't even thought about how much I was going to charge them, because I was still in that corporate mindset where I didn't have to think about prices. I could literally just do my job. And of course I didn't know what to say, and it really just meant that the pitch bombed. And I came away, I obviously didn't get the contract because it was then clear that I had no idea what I was doing. And I was absolutely devastated, because I thought, this is one of the first opportunities I've had to pitch the business, and I've cocked up because I didn't know what to charge them. So yeah, I was devastated. But then I realised that there was a lesson in it. I had to shape my approach to business. I had to learn some different skills so that in future the proposals would be rock solid. I could have let that stop me. I could have let that affect my confidence. But by always looking for the lesson and using that in that situation, it helped build my confidence. It gave me clarity, and it kept me positive because I knew what I needed to do differently next time. So when you're manifesting, life is not going to be all sunshine and flowers and roses and happy days. There's going to be shitty days. But if you have that always looking for the lesson mindset, it's going to help you maneuver through them with strength and seeing the possibility of what could be, even if you're not in that place at the moment. So that's the first habit. The second habit is, this is a tricky one for some people to take on, but it is important. And it's, I take responsibility for everything that happens in my life. Now, taking responsibility, I think, is often misunderstood. Taking responsibility is often associated with blame. And that's not what it means. Not in my world, anyway. I know that I'm responsible for everything that happens in my life. It doesn't mean I'm to blame, but I do have to acknowledge accountability for my part in anything because it's my life. An example of this is one of my ex-relationships. It was horrendous, toxic. It was all of the bad things that you can imagine in a marriage. And honestly, I was not to blame. I know that. But I have to take responsibility for the fact that I chose to stay for as long as I did. It doesn't mean that I'm to blame. It doesn't mean I deserved anything that happened to me. But staying for as long as I did was a choice I made. Even if I'd have left straight away, I still made the choice to get into a relationship with that person. You have to accept that you take responsibility for your own life. You can only make decisions based on what you know at the time. That is absolutely true. And especially in love and dating, sometimes somebody will appear in your life and they will seem like they are wonderful and lovely and they turn out to be a massive arsehole. That doesn't mean you're to blame for how they treated you, but there is a responsibility there on your part that you chose that relationship. And again, it links back to the first habit, because if you know that you take responsibility for your part in anything, you can then look for the lesson. You can empower yourself because you then understand that you have the power to influence your life, and it puts you in a position of strength. It helps you grow when you take responsibility for your own decisions. And it helps you realise that, again, life is not happening to you, it's happening for you. You can influence what happens, but you can also learn the lessons from it. So you see these habits are already starting to merge into each other. So taking responsibility for your life does not mean that you are to blame for bad things that happen to you. I really want to reiterate that. It's about taking responsibility for your part. So if it was a shitty relationship, you have to take responsibility for getting into that relationship because that was your choice. But what you can then do is think, okay, so why did I choose to get into that relationship? And that's what you're analysing. That's what you're taking responsibility for, and that's what you're learning the lesson from that we spoke about in habit 1. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's number 2. I take responsibility for everything that happens in my life. The third habit is I don't block blocks. What I mean by this is if anybody that's listening to this that works with me in any of my programs will know that I talk a lot about manifestation blocks. There are 6 main blocks that will stop you from manifesting life, love, money, anything that you want to manifest. There are 6 big blocks that will come up and will stop those things happening. And what a lot of people try to do naturally is they will ignore those blocks or they will suppress them. And it doesn't get rid of them because they're still there in the subconscious mind. So when people will try to ignore a block, it could be that someone ends a relationship or is in a relationship that ends and they take a lot of blame onto themselves. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have this. I shouldn't have that. That is a secret manifestation block that's coming up. I won't go into too much detail in this now because it's a much deeper subject, but just trying to get you into the idea that there are manifesting blocks that will come up and they will stop you getting what you want. And they will present themselves as negative thoughts, negative feelings. What people will naturally try and do is mask those things with positive thoughts. And that doesn't work because those blocks are still there. So if somebody feels that the relationship ending was their fault, That's driven from maybe a manifesting block called the worthiness block. If they just ignore that and eventually try and tell themselves, maybe through affirmations, I am worthy, I am this, I am that, it doesn't change what's happening underneath. So my habit is I don't block blocks. I don't try and hide them. I let them all come up. Whenever I'm faced with a difficult situation in my life, I let that block in and I examine it and I see what's going on. And then I start to take responsibility for what I've done to help create that block. I look for the lesson. You see, it's all merging together. But the worst thing that you can do if you have negative thoughts, negative feelings about any difficult situation in your life, the worst thing you can do is just try and cover them with positive thoughts. Don't block your blocks. Let them in and resolve them. Because when you do that, you start to become more self-aware and you can start to see where that block is coming up in other areas of your life. I struggled with the worthiness block for years. It would present in my dating life, but once I knew about it, I could see it presented in my working life. It even presented in the way that I parented. So this is where this self-awareness, when you don't block the block, you let it in, you examine it, you see what's driving it, you can then start to see where it's coming up in all different areas of your life. So don't block your blocks. If you don't know what your blocks are, start listening to your negative thoughts, the negative feelings you have about situations, and it will start to give you clues about where your blocks are. I do a lot deeper block identification and awareness in my programs. If there is something that you want to know more about to help with this, shoot me a DM, send me a text message, whatever you want to do, and I will help you from there. Actually, don't send me a text message because I can't reply on them. Send me a DM and I'll tell you what programs I've got available that will help you get rid of blocks and also identify them. But that is number 3. Don't block your blocks. Number 4, this is one of my favourite habits that I have formed, and I think it's the one that has really made the most impact on my manifestations. And that is, I live as the future successful version of me now. If you've listened to any of my previous episodes about identity, you will know that pretty much all of my manifestation teachings are centered around identity. When I say identity, I mean the person that you are, the way that you show up in the world, your actions, your thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings. I choose to live as the future version of me right now, the version of me that already has what I want in the future. Because when I do that, I am aligning myself with that vision of the future that I want to achieve. Is it easy? No. Do I mess up? Yes. I quite often slip back into old identities, unhelpful identities that steer me off course from my manifestations. But the fact is, because I know that I'm always aiming to live as that future successful version of me now, it keeps me on track, and it means I can identify when I'm starting to spiral, when I'm starting to go wrong, and it helps me shift my energy quicker than if I wasn't trying to live as that future version of me right now. If you haven't listened to any of the identity episodes that I've done, please go back and listen to them, because those episodes are still they're the most popular episodes that I put out. I think they've got the most downloads, and they do form a lot of the basis of the programs that I teach. It's all around identity, because think about it like this. If the version of you right now was the person who would get what you wanted, then you would already have it. For you to get something different in your life, you have to become someone different and do something different. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the person that you are if you want what you've got right now. But if you want something different, you have to become someone different. And that's what this habit is all about, living as the future successful version of you right now. And number 5, I trust the process. Now that sounds easier said than done. I know. But it is so important. You have to have faith in the journey that you're on, even when immediate results aren't visible. Believing in the process keeps you positive and focused because you know on a very deep level that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. And I can speak to this really clearly because it's something that is happening right now in my love life. I don't want to go into too much detail because, there's somebody else involved and I don't want to, give out information about somebody that hasn't asked me to. But let's just say there is a situation that is happening in my love life and I have had my doubtful moments over the past 4-5 years. And all of a sudden, in the past 2 weeks, I can see that by trusting the process, it's all coming the way it should do. I know that sounds really vague, and I promise when I can, I will share the whole story because you will be mind blown. I'm mind blown. But these things have only happened because I trust the process. Even when things feel really, really difficult, I know that things are happening in my favour. I just can't see them yet. So if you too are single and you really want to be with somebody and nothing is happening, it could be without you even realising it. Just because you can't see something physically happening in front of you, it doesn't mean it's not happening. You can't see what's happening in the whole world, and yet the whole world is still moving on. Things are still happening. It doesn't have to be right in your vision for it to be happening. Sometimes silence is when the most magic is happening in your manifestations. So please trust the process. The moment you start to doubt the manifestation process, that's when things will stall. Treat it like, I think I've spoken about it on the podcast before, treat it like your Amazon order. You've placed an order from the spiritual Amazon store. You can't see it. You've placed your order, but it's being delivered to you. It's being packaged. It's being put in the van. It's being driven to you. That sounds like I'm talking about putting a man in a van and like kidnapping him. I don't mean that. I just mean, whenever you try to manifest something, imagine that you've placed an order with the spiritual Amazon store, the universal Amazon store. Trust that it's on the way. It might take a bit longer than you would like, but that's okay because it's still coming. You have to trust the process. Sometimes things have to shift in your favour, and it might take, like a cog in a machine. You have to turn one cog for another to turn, for another to turn, for another to turn. That could be what's happening in your love life right now. Or anything that you want to manifest, whether it's a new job or a business. Sometimes that original cog has to be turned to allow all the other cogs to turn. Some things can manifest overnight. Some things can take months or even years. Your job is to ask for what you want, show up as the person that knows they deserve them, and trust the bloody process. So those are my first 5 habits. I'm just going to recap them for you. So the first one is I always look for the lesson. Number 2 is I take responsibility for everything that happens in my life. Number 3, I don't block blocks. Number 4, I live as the future successful version of me now. And number 5, I trust the process. Those are your first 5 habits. I will be covering the next lot of habits in next week's episode.
So that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've enjoyed listening, I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe and leave a review, because it really does help me to reach more people. I've left some links in the show notes so you can connect with me, or you can grab one of my manifesting resources. Until next week, sending you lots of love, light, and manifesting vibes.